is now being recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us this Tuesday afternoon for another National Lutheran School Accreditation Best Practice webinar. Today's webinar will feature a best practice in place at St. Paul Lutheran School in Orange, California. This webinar was prepared by our friends at St. Paul and is being produced by Concordia University, Wisconsin's Office of Continuing and Distance Education. We thank our friends at Concordia for their leadership and support in this endeavor. My name is Drew Gertis. I'm Early Childhood Director at Messiah Lutheran School in Weldon Spring, Missouri. I also serve on the Executive Committee for National Lutheran School Accreditation. Just a few notes before we begin our webinar. There's actually one additional webinar scheduled this month for St. Paul Lutheran School in Orange, California. Next Tuesday, February 17th, they'll have another webinar on transitioning students throughout their early childhood program and into their elementary school. All of the webinars in February have been prepared by our friends at St. Paul and represent best practices currently in place at their school. Live webinars are participatory events. We appreciate your questions and comments. Feel free to express yourself and ask questions by tapping in the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. All of the webinars presented this year are available on demand on the login page of the Lutheran School portal. You don't need to be a portal member to view them. If you like what was shared, we invite you to view a recorded webinar together with your faculty. Another great resource of Lutheran schools is the LCMS School Ministry Facebook page. Our Facebook page provides another opportunity for our schools to connect informally. We invite you to share your encouraging stories on the LCMS School Ministry Facebook page. And if you'll join me for a short word of prayer before we begin. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather today and learn something new. The partnerships we have in our Lutheran school ministries are so valuable. Be with those who are presenting as well as those who are participating. Continue to bless us all with your love and mercy. In your name we pray, amen. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Jim Bowden, who serves as principal at St. Paul Lutheran School in Orange, California. Thanks, Jim. I know you've got a great crew with you, and I'll turn it over to you.
Greetings. St. Paul's Lutheran Schools is a mission and ministry of St. Paul's Lutheran Church. It is a robust ministry that is enthusiastic in its Christ-centered approach to an excellent Christian education. At St. Paul's, we exist to educate children, nurture their faith, and equip them to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. St. Paul's is located in the city of Orange, California, which is in the Southern California area. The ministry spans 2 campuses in North Orange County. The Church and the Early Childhood Development Center is located on one campus, while the K-8 ministry is on the second campus. The congregation took a great leap of faith in 1985 by purchasing a former public school for the K-8 program. St. Paul's Lutheran Church was founded in 1907 and was located a few miles away from the present campus. The school opened in 1908. From the very beginning, the focus of the ministry of St. Paul's was and continues to be the school. The ministry has grown to serve over 600 students from infant to 8th grade. Today, St. Paul's has an enrollment of over 180 students in the Early Childhood Development Center and over 480 in the K-8 program. 5 administrators oversee a staff of over 80 dedicated Christian individuals who are intent on bringing the gospel into the lives of students and families. The programs of St. Paul's Lutheran School have been recognized as a National Blue Ribbon School in 2009 and is fully accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges and NLSA. Both accreditations came in 2013. St. Paul's was recognized as an exemplary school in 2014. My name, as was said, is Jim Bodwin, and I am honored and humbled to be the principal of St. Paul's Lutheran School since 1995. I have served as a teacher and administrator in Lutheran education for nearly 32 years. I would like now to introduce Kristen Fink as she presents today's webinar, Multi-Tiered Systems of Support.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Kristen Fink, and I am one of the assistant principals of Student Support Services, and I also serve as the school counselor. It's been a joy and a privilege to work with our students, parents, and teachers to ensure that our students are growing academically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. Today, we will be presenting a webinar on multi-tiered system of supports. We will be focusing on both academic and behavioral supports for students from preschool through middle school. Our goal is to provide an overview of multi-tiered system of support and provide you with intervention ideas to ensure the needs of your students are being met. I will be joined by two teachers who will share with you their experience and how it has helped them to be more effective teachers in meeting the needs of their students. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Evan Hall. Evan Hall is a 7th grade student. He also serves as the treasurer of our servant leadership team, and he's going to share a story that's going to get us prepared to hear all about MTSS, which you now will hear me refer to. We know in education acronyms are very big, so from now on when I'm talking about multi-tiered system of support, I'm going to refer to it as MTSS. So we welcome Evan.
In a small town, a group of fishermen gathered down at the river. Not long after they got there, a child came floating down the rapids, calling for help. One of the group on the shore quickly dived in and pulled the child out. Minutes later, another child came, then another, and then many more children were coming down the river. Soon everyone was diving in and dragging children to the shore, then jumping back in to save as many as they could. In the midst of all this frenzy, one of the group was seen walking away. Her colleagues were irate. How could she leave when there were so many children to save? After long hours, to everyone's relief, the flow of children stopped, and the group could finally catch their breath. At that moment, their colleague came back. They turned on her and angrily shouted, "How could you walk off when we needed everyone here to save the children?" She replied, "It occurred to me that someone ought to go upstream and find out why so many kids were falling into the river. What I found is that the old wooden bridge had several planks missing, and when some children tried to jump over the gap, they couldn't make it and fell into the river. So I got someone to fix the bridge."
Thank you, Evan. I think this story fits well with today's webinar as it shows a teacher who truly understood what it means to solve a problem. As educators, when students are struggling, it's our job to find out what is causing the difficulty and then to come up with a solution and intervene so the student can feel successful. And that's exactly what the teacher in our story did. She figured out what the problem was and fixed it so that we didn't have the problem of the kids floating down the river. And a mantra that I feel very strongly about is that kids do well if they can. And so we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students and figuring out why exactly are they struggling academically as well as behaviorally. In 1995, St. Paul's hired a full-time resource teacher to implement interventions to help students who were struggling in reading and math. We began using a multi-tiered system of supports in 2002 when our research teacher implemented reading fluency benchmark screening for our resource students. The next year, we became very intentional and implemented reading fluency screenings for all students in order to close the gap for those students who were not at grade level. And we all know that early intervention is important, and we know as kids move up in the grades, that gap gets wider, so it's important that we intervene early so we make sure that we can close that gap. From there, we began to add a benchmark screening each year for all grade levels. We added reading comprehension one year. The next year, we added math computation, and finally, math concepts and applications. In 2011, we implemented our positive behavior intervention and support, which is our PBIS, and we fondly refer to this as our Panther Pact and our Panther Pride, and we're very proud of being Panthers and having pride. In 2013, we began to look at screenings for our pre-K students at our Early Childhood Development Center. We researched different screening tools, and in 2014, we implemented early literacy screenings for all of our pre-K classes. MTSS is not a new term in education. It's been around for a long time. A good example that I like to use when talking about MTSS would be when you go to the doctor and your blood pressure is high. The doctor does not automatically put you on medication. They'll collect data for several office visits to see if your blood pressure continues to be high. They might recommend exercise or a change in diet to help bring down your blood pressure. So a multi-tiered system of supports is a term to use to describe an evidence-based model of schooling that uses data-based problem solving to integrate academic and behavioral instruction and intervention. Data is a very important component of MTSS, and it's used to give teachers options in delivering instruction, as well as providing other options in order to differentiate to meet the needs of their students. So the bottom line is we want to make sure that we are providing our students with options if we are seeing them struggle, and that we are differentiating. Need-driven decision-making seeks to ensure that resources reach the appropriate students at the appropriate levels to accelerate the performance of all students to achieve or exceed proficiency. Once again, and you'll hear me say this several times, our goal is to close that gap and make sure that our students are getting what they need. The ultimate goal of MTSS is to assist all students and improve their academic and behavioral success. There has been over 3 decades of scientific research to support the validity of MTSS, and the focus of MTS is of 5 distinct areas, and we'll talk more about each of those. And good teaching is a key component of MTSS. It's high-quality classroom instruction using research-based programs and instructional methods being delivered to the students in the classroom. We want to make sure that good teaching is happening in our core curriculum, that we're checking for validity. It's very important, and that we're proactive in making sure that we're fortifying the core curriculum. There are 5 distinct areas of MTSS and can also be referred to as the INGs of MTSS. The first is fortifying. Is good teaching happening in the classroom? And is professional development ongoing? Are teachers spending time differentiating the needs of their students? The second ING is screening. Screening should take place 3 times a year. You should choose screeners that are reliable and valid. You can use screenings that may be based on benchmark, or they might be based on norm reference criteria. Next is intervention. We want to make sure that the interventions that we are implementing are research-based and will help to remediate skill deficits that students might have. The fourth thing is monitoring. It's important to monitor the effectiveness of our intervention. And the final thing is database-driven decisions. Accurate and timely data are crucial to effective problem solving. MTSS decisions should be made as a team. So teams make decisions based on student performance, data that has established benchmarks, especially in the areas of screening, progress monitoring, and intervention effectiveness. As I said earlier, MTSS is a team approach, and the ultimate goal of MTSS is to ensure student success by following the 5 distinct components of MTSS: fortifying, screening, intervening, progress monitoring, and database decision-making. It's important that the principal drives the team and provide ongoing professional development for support staff and teachers. In addition, it's important that parents and your school board understand the importance of MTSS and why it is being implemented in your school and how it will ultimately ensure success for all students. Why MTSS? It will ensure increased focus on early intervention. MTSS emphasis in screening 3 times a year, which can help identify those with learning challenges right away. Teachers can then implement interventions to remediate the skill deficits before they lead to severe chronic academic difficulties. Just like we heard in our story at the beginning, that's what our ultimate goal is. Personalized instruction is based on student needs. Teachers design instruction based on what they have learned about the strengths and skill deficits of each student. And instruction is driven by assessment. With MTSS, student progress is frequently monitored to ensure learning is happening. If it's not, a different teaching strategy is put into place. Rather than trying something over a long period of time without knowing whether it's working, teachers can verify if a strategy is being effective with a particular learner. Improved quality of instruction is another reason for MTSS. It emphasized the need for quality teaching through the use of research-based instructional methods, and we'll talk a lot about the importance of research-based methods as well as instructional materials. When teaching methods are grounded in research, students have the best chance of success. Finally, MTSS focuses on positive relationships in the classroom. And I believe very, very strongly that in education, it's all about relationships. So if teachers are able to identify students' unique characteristics, this will ensure that teachers are creating a classroom where learners feel supported and confident in who they are. And who wouldn't want to learn in a classroom who's the teacher knows you the best and knows how you learn and how you relate. And it's just a very important component of MTSS. At St. Paul's, we use screeners that use benchmark criteria. We have used DIBELS, which is a great screener, but we currently use AIMSweb for all students in kindergarten through 8th grade. We administer our screenings in the fall, the winter, and the spring. We also take advantage of AIMSweb progress monitoring screenings as well, as AIMSweb provides over 30 different benchmark probes, so we can determine and collect data to see if our interventions are working. Students who are not at benchmark are progress monitored weekly or every other week, depending on their need. Our screeners help us determine if students would benefit from Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 interventions. MTSS at St. Paul's consists of 3 tiers of support. Tier 1 is the core curriculum. Students are engaged in high-quality classroom instruction by our wonderful teachers who are using research-based programs and instructional methods. They are utilizing technology, and they are making sure the needs of all their students of their students are being met. Students in Tier 2 are given instruction in small groups. Research-based interventions are targeted at specific strengths and needs. So if a student is struggling with reading fluency, they'll be pulled out in small groups to work on that exact skill. Students in Tier 3 are students who are enrolled in our Student Support and Intervention Program, which is a pull-out program 2 times a week, depending on the need of the student. Similar program to a lot of our other wonderful Lutheran schools have, and these students are receiving more intensive interventions specifically designed to meet their individual needs, and the instruction is delivered in small groups or individually, and these students also have individual education plans with goals and objectives. Teachers use the data from their screenings to inform instructional decisions. The data is used to determine whether the student is improving adequately. If they are not improving and the data is showing this, teachers must revise and change their interventions. This is where progress monitoring comes in. Teachers will collect 4 to 6 weeks of data to adequately determine if the intervention that is being implemented is working. And now I would like to welcome Mrs. Sue Gabert, our wonderful 2nd grade teacher who has been using AIMSweb for the last 3 years in her classroom. I'm going to ask her some questions, and I want her to share her expertise and how AIMSweb and progress monitoring and screening and all the things that I talked about have been a valuable tool for her in the classroom. So welcome, Sue. Thank you, Kristen. So my first question, Sue, and for our audience is, how is administering AIMSweb benchmark assessment help you to identify your students' needs?
Well, teachers usually know who have the children who have special needs and who are behind in a few ways, in a few different things. But what AIMSweb does really well is validate those observations that we've already made. And the screen that Kristen is going to show you in a little while is what our AIMSweb, we call it a rainbow report, and it shows the students who are well above all the way down to well below grade level and where we would like them to be. And it also gives suggestions on if we should continue the plan, if they're at average, and if they're in the average range, to continue the plan we're on, or if they're well below average, to begin immediate problem solving right away so that we can get them started on something. So it definitely drives intervention because we can see so clearly who needs it so easily.
And you kind of answered my next question, was how you use the data in communicating to parents when addressing their concerns about their child's progress?
Well, I would normally, after a benchmark, if someone shows up that they need some extra help, we contact those parents and we mention that they have had some lower scores on the benchmark screenings and explain to them what we're doing. And of course, they're always happy to hear that their child is getting extra attention in that area. And there's also a page on the Ames Web program that has a graph on it, which is really nice because it shows the progress that their child has been making after certain probes have been given.
Great, Sue. And my last question to you, and for all of us educators that are in the room or listening, we know that time is of the essence for teachers. That's always a big thing with teachers. And what advice or helpful hints would you give teachers to help them implement and administer benchmark probes in regards to time, as we are asking you to do another thing?
It doesn't take very long. I was intimidated at first, and I thought it would take such a long time to do these probes and the benchmarks, but really it's just a few minutes a day. And I find that it works well to do the probes on Fridays because I have some aid time then, and so she gives a couple. We use our iPads for some of them for the fluency, and so that works out really well. But it's surprising how it doesn't take as much time. It's really a blessing, much more than a burden to do that.
Well, thank you, Sue. I appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, I was glad that you were able to hear from one of our teachers, and we'll hear from another teacher that has taught both 5th grade here for us and also early childhood a little bit later. So this example that you see up right now is of a 3rd grade fall benchmark screening report from Ames Web. Sue referred to it as a rainbow report. This is in the area of one of the 4 measures that we screen is reading fluency. And it shows the performance summary of each student. It also shows the teacher and administrator what instructional action should be taken for each individual student. In addition, it also gives the Lexile level to help teachers with providing reading material at the student's appropriate level. This particular report would tell us that one of our students is well below average, and they should receive immediate attentive interventions in a small group, and they should be progress monitored weekly. It also shows that 3 of our students are in the below average range, and an intervention should be implemented for these students in the skill of fluency, and they should be progress monitored every other week. It shows a good chunk of our students are in the average range, and then we have 4 students that are above average or well above average. So just like we want to remediate, again, we're talking about meeting the needs of our students. So those students that show up in the, I call it blue, some call it purple area, and the white, those are students that we need to be doing some enrichment activities and some strong critical thinking skills because we want to, again, make sure that their needs are being met as well. After benchmark screenings have been administered, teachers set progress monitoring goals for their students to achieve by the end of the school year. So anyone that might have showed up in that pink or that yellow area, we're setting up goals for them. In this particular example, this is a student who is being progress monitored in the area of reading comprehension. This particular screener is called the MAISE. And at the fall benchmark screening, the student got 3 correct on a 3-minute, it's a 3-minute assessment. And they got 3 correct, which put them below average. Interventions based on reading comprehension skills were implemented, and the teacher is now tracking the progress of this student. And the goal for this student is to go from 3 correct to 19 correct by June. And you can see that on the black line there. That's the goal that we want to get them to. But they're already trending above that, which is good. Which means whatever we're doing for this particular student is they're on track to reach their goal, and our interventions are being effective. And this is a great tool that I can share with my principal, as well as parents, to let them know this is what we're doing. It also has on these screens you're able to put in the actual interventions of what you might be working on. So it's a wonderful tool. How often do special education teachers hear that an intervention is research-based? The answer is just about every time a publisher tries to sell them intervention materials. Fortunately, I think we become more able to recognize the programs that are supported by research. I just read an article not too long ago on the RTI network, and it shared this quote by Arthur Ellis, who wrote the book Research on Educational Innovation. Today's flagship is often tomorrow's abandoned shipwreck. And that sometimes happens as sometimes we see that something's great and we hear all about it and we implement it, and then it's not working for that particular child, or it may not be working for that particular teacher. So it's important that when we are looking at our educational practice, that we are basing our decisions on research. What Works Clearinghouse, I know most of you probably have heard of it, but if you haven't, it's a great website that will assist you in finding research-based interventions for your students. I'm going to spend just a short time. There are so many interventions out there, and at the end I have a resource page, and I'm also left my contact information of some great math interventions and reading interventions that we have used that are research-based that have just been done so many great things for our students. But when we're looking at math interventions, these are some of the things that our focus should be on in kindergarten through 5th grade, and then through 8th grade. Solving word problems is important, but I think one of the most important intervention at all grade levels is planning your lessons with intentional activities that focus on building fluent retrieval of basic math facts. So our teachers plan their lessons where they at least spend 10 minutes, hopefully every day, in just reviewing basic math facts. Reading intervention should focus on the 5 big areas of reading. So especially when we're looking at our primary students, our kindergarten, our 1st grade, we're really looking at their alphabetical principle. Do they have their letter naming down? Then we go on to phonemic awareness. Do they know their sounds, first of all? Then are they able to segment those sounds and be able to tell you all the sounds that are in that word? And then nonsense words. Are they able to take a word like NAM and sound it out? Because then we know that they're ready to start reading. And that's the other wonderful thing about MTSS is we have screeners for K and 1 that we use that do focus on alphabetical principle as well as phonemic awareness. And then we're building their fluency and their reading comprehension, and then also their vocabulary. And we know that when we're doing reading and interventions, it's important that it's in small groups, and it's focused on up to 3 foundational reading skills, and it should take place 2 times a week for at least 20 minutes. And again, the time is of the essence, and I know that that's really hard, so I try to encourage our teachers, just like you would plan time for science or PE or social studies, that you are actually very intentional about making sure that you have at least 2 times a week for at least 20 minutes that you're having intervention time. And in our middle school, we just implemented this year. We have 1 period on Tuesday. This is actually our intervention period, where teachers are working with our students and helping them with those skill deficits that we've been talking about. So we've been spending a lot of time talking about MTS and academics, but what about behavior? A lot of times people will say, well, you can't measure behavior, but you can use data to track the effectiveness of behavioral interventions. And for us, our Tier 1, we focus again, like I said, on the PBIS model, Positive Behavior Intervention and Support System. It is an MTSS approach to behavioral interventions without the screening. There are behavioral screeners out there that I've begun to see in research. We don't currently use them, but what we use first is our PBIS, and it's entitled the Panther Pact. And you'll see there that those are the 5 in Pride. Those are the 5 character traits that we focus on throughout the school year. We also have a Panther Pledge that our students will recite every morning, just like they recite the pledges. They're going to pledge to persevere, to show respect, to demonstrate integrity, and act with diligence, and to show empathy. And it's really fun to see them get excited about reciting that. And these are expected behaviors of all of our students. And our Panther Pact is just that. It's a list of expected behaviors of our students, and we're focusing on being respectful, responsible, and safe. So our Panther Pact is spread out over K-8, so everybody knows that We walk in the hallway. We're respectful to our peers. One of the things that I really push with the kids is when we pass in the hallway, we want to make sure that we greet each other by name. So if you don't know the person's name, you say hi. But if you do, then you definitely recognize them by name. And we recognize our positive behavior. Here you'll see an example of an annual behavioral goal from one of our students who is in Tier 2 intervention. So when they get to Tier 2, or the PBIS may not be working for them, we might want to set an annual goal for them. So for this particular student, we wanted to control their age-appropriate participation in a group setting. So maybe they're not raising their hand, they're blurting, they're moving around on the carpet. So we set an annual goal because that's what we want to do. And we focus on 1 or 2 behaviors because we don't want to focus on too many. And then we will write a short-term objective for that particular child. So for this example, when X is frustrated, he will present his teacher with a picture exchange card for a break 3 out of the 5 frustrating episodes. So a picture exchange card is just a card that they would give the teacher and say, look, I'm really struggling. I need to take a break. And then the teacher would track how many times that student actually used that exchange card, because that's what we want them to do. We want them to be able to calm themselves so they don't get frustrated. Another one might be we use tabs on a student's desk. We may put 8 at the beginning of the day. And when the student is not on task, we take the tab off. And then the teacher is able to track that data. So again, we're implementing these interventions and these behavioral interventions to make sure that these students are, that they're working and that they are making progress. Just recently, we had the privilege of working with our Early Childhood Development Center to assist them with implementing benchmark screenings for all of our pre-K students. We spent some time to research the best screenings for our students and ones that were research-based. Screening tools are not new to our Early Childhood Development Center, as we have used a variety of tools over the years. Here are a few examples. We felt, though, that it was important for our transition of our pre-K students that are coming to our kindergarten that we had some data to ensure kindergarten readiness skills. But again, as you can see, these are just some of the screeners that we have used over the years. So this led to MTSS at the early childhood level, and we chose Individual Growth and Development Indicators. Again, another acronym in education, IGDI. Are a set of preschool assessments for monitoring the growth and development of preschool-aged children on the pathway to kindergarten. The goal of these screenings is to inform and differentiate instruction, identifying struggling learners, to create performance snapshots, develop data-driven decisions, and to improve parent-teacher communication. This initial research and development of the Individual Growth and Development Indicators was conducted at the University of Minnesota. There is also, for your reference, an early numeracy screening tool and progress monitoring tools for promoting early mathematics and number skills, and we plan to add this screening in the fall of 2015. I now would like to welcome our second educator, Mrs. Sally Brink. She is one of our Gold Room pre-K teachers. She also taught 5th grade for us for 4 years, and while she was here, she did use Ames Web. And I will tell you one of the things that I admire most about Sally is we talked about the relationship and how MTS gives you the opportunity really to know your students academically and behaviorally. She had a huge impact on my son. In fact, her picture and him at his confirmation is still up in his room, and he's a sophomore in high school. But I think that's just a good testament of how we can build relationships through really helping our students feel like they're successful. So please welcome Sally Brink.
Thank you, Kristen.
And our first question to Sally is similar to the ones that I asked Sue, but she administers Ames Web benchmark assessments, and she's also administered our IDGI screenings. How has that helped you to identify your students' needs?
Well, definitely administering the assessments has allowed us to immediately see areas of strength and weakness in each individual child, but it also gives us an accurate picture of these areas within our entire class. So these assessments are important tools that can drive our instruction to truly help meet the needs of each of our students. For example, if my classroom population is struggling with sound identification, which is one of the portions of
one of the assessments, it's clearly evident to see that this need is on our record sheet right away the minute after we administer the assessment. And then we can use this data as a foundation to drive where we go with our curriculum and beyond. On a more individual basis, these assessments also serve to help us identify the individual needs of each child so we can move forward with giving them support and extra challenges in this specific areas assessed.
Excellent. And we know when we work with early childhood, sometimes that's the first time a parent might hear you say that they might be behind.
Absolutely.
So how has the data you've collected helped you in communicating to the parents and maybe easing their concerns or, wait, what's wrong with my child?
Right. Well, the beauty of giving these data-driven assessments is that the data gained gives me something objective to share with parents. So the data doesn't have an opinion, it doesn't take into account the student's personality, and it serves as an overall clear tool to help share a child's progress and growth that will ultimately benefit the child. The data really gives us specific areas of strengths and weaknesses and aids in giving both the teacher and the parent an opportunity to come alongside the child and meet their needs. This being said, our center focuses on educating the whole child. So it's also important to recognize when we are sharing this information with parents that these assessments are just one tool and one way to see into a child's overall growth and learning.
Very well said. And so when you've done these screenings, and like you said, you might recognize that some of your students are struggling in the sound area. So you're going to do some progress monitoring. How has that helped you with your intervention?
Mm-hmm. Well, as a developmental preschool, we're always keeping in mind the concept of play in each intervention and each activity that we engage our students in. So at the early childhood level as well, oftentimes the children who need the most extra support with the areas assessed are sometimes more prone to lose interest if an explicit intervention is not based in play. So to give some specific examples of some interventions that we regularly implement with our below and below average students, I'm just going to focus in on one of the assessment portions titled, Which One Doesn't Belong? So children are presented with different items and they have to choose out the item out of 3 or 4 that does not belong. Basically, it's just testing and seeing sorting, classification. So if a child is struggling with this concept of classification and sorting, we'll often set out trays of toys and have the kids physically touch, play with, and then identify which ones belong and don't belong. Putting toys on trays not only defines their workspace and helps them focus, but it's also giving children the extra support of being able to hold, touch, and play with the items. This is often what they need to be successful. In the same way, often our children who struggle with alliteration and matching letter sounds to sounds they hear in words will use what we call in the Gold Room our sound around box, and we'll isolate letter sounds one at a time. Our sound around box incorporates pictures, toys, and other manipulatives that go along with each letter sound inside a large box for the children to learn and practice with. And once they've mastered a specific letter sound with our sound around box, we'll then add in another letter sound and have them practice differentiating the multiple letter sounds they find. So these are just 2 basic examples of interventions that we have in place on a regular basis in our classrooms.
And Sally will be around at the end if you have any other questions, and you'll also have the privilege, she will be doing our last webinar next Tuesday. So we thank Sally, and we are so appreciative for just the wonderful teacher that she is. So thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
We want to share some helpful hints on implementing MTSS at your schools. We would recommend that you start with one screening. Reading fluency would be an excellent choice to start with. Most benchmark programs, such as Ames Web and Dibbles, have a data collection component that allows you to see data over the years. So for us, we've been using this for so many years. I may have a student that's in 5th grade. I can go back and show the parents the growth that they've made since kindergarten. Also, with the reading fluency, one of the things that why I recommend that you start with that one is that one can be done completely on the computer or on the iPad, and the data is just collected automatically for you. And once your students have all been screened, you hit your rainbow report and you're able to see how they did. It's also helpful to train your instructional aides if you're blessed to have them, or retired teachers that might be in the area, or parents to help with these screenings. They're very easy to administer. Most of them, the fluency is 1 minute. MAIS, the comprehension, is a 3-minute assessment, and then both of the math screenings are both 8 minutes. And MTSS looks different in every school, so focus on what your school's needs are. Through MTSS, teachers can collect data to identify which students struggle and which students should be monitored more closely. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you get the teachers the data. Get those screening done so that they can see exactly where the students are struggling. And most of us do spend the first couple weeks of the school year really getting to know our students. But these screeners really let us know exactly where they are in 4 key areas. We also want to improve full class instruction. The best and easiest way to increase learning in a school is to increase full class instruction. Most experts in MTSS will agree that if classroom instruction is not being successful with 75% of students, then you're not ready to implement MTSS. So you want to make sure that you really are differentiating in that core curriculum. And encourage your teachers to create time in their schedules for small group interventions. And professional development is key. When you are ready to get started, of course, we're a resource for you, but another one out there is Pat Quinn, the RTI guy. He's an excellent presenter and has very, very practical ideas for schools that are ready to implement MTSS. We have listed some great resources for you. We thank you so much for being a part of our best practice webinar on multi-tiered system of supports, and we pray that you meet the needs of all of your students. I've also put my contact information up on this research page. Please feel free to contact me at any time. I'm here to help. I'm very passionate about kids. That's why I'm a counselor, and I love what I do. And I just pray God's continued blessings. And now we would like to open up if you have any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Kristen. This is Drew again. I did the introduction to the webinar. Awesome information. One of the things I really appreciated is that you include early childhood education in the whole program and the whole system here. And so getting students with those early interventions is certainly critical and key. Again, great job to all of you there at St. Paul's. I just can't say enough good things about your wonderful ministry. And like Kristen mentioned, we're going to open it up here to questions. So if you do have a question, go ahead and type that down in the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, and we'll take a look and see what people are wondering for us today.
Okay.
I can see that there are a few people typing here and there.
Can you turn it back on?
Another opportunity for questions from anyone. Kristen, if you could maybe just maybe put that last slide back on with your contact information, that might be beneficial as well.
Okay. I can't see the chat box right now. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions coming up in the chat box, but just maybe ending with your contact information could be beneficial there. I know quite a few people access our webinars from the archive, and they'll be able to participate on their own later on demand. So don't be surprised if a week from now or 2 weeks from now you get a few little emails and contacts. So again, Kristen, thank you so much for the information. Thanks for all of your work. Thanks to all of your teachers. And God's continued blessings to everyone there at St. Paul's in Orange. And Kristen also mentioned at the end of her webinar that there is one more coming up, the Early Childhood Program at St. Paul's in Orange. We'll talk about their transitioning program throughout their Early Childhood Program and then also into the elementary school. That'll happen next Tuesday, same time. So keep looking in your email box for the link related to that webinar. Thanks again, everyone. God's blessings, and hope to see you next Tuesday.
Thank you.